Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have an unusual game to share with you, a rare blunder in this one. This was played in 1960, a Buenos Aires tournament. On the white end, Wolfgang Unzicker, playing against Bobby Fischer. All right, the opening we have here, Sicilian defense, open Sicilian. And to be a bit more exact, we have a Najdorf. Now from here, these next three will play. Now, notice the order of their development. So if you start off with f4, in a way, you do interfere with the bishop. It's not outside of the pawn chain or pawn duo in this case. Also, if you deploy the queen, let's say to f3 right here, you're interfering with the f pawn. So the order here is first with bishop g5, next up f4, and only now queen f3. This is a very flexible arrangement here. All right, follow up queen c7, queenside castles, bishop d3, knight development with tempo in this case. We get the knight exchange, and we are already very close now to seeing this blunder. Follow up from here, queen g3. Now, before I share with you Fischer's move, let me throw this one to you as a pop quiz. How would you respond here as black? Feel free to pause the video. All right, before I share Fischer's move in the game, or really his big blunder of the game, I want to draw your attention to the top line, kicks off with e5, as well as this knight h5 move. There's a really interesting sequence that kicks off after the knight h5 move. But first, let's look at what top play would look like from here. e5, f5 is a top reply. And now it wants to activate the rook, relocate the bishop, and in a situation like this, we're going for a bishop for knight exchange. Defending like this to weakening, dropping the bishop back will drop e4. So this is what the computer has its eye on, and from here, in an ideal world, we're looking for these pawn advances for white. Black will be looking to disrupt the bishop, a timely d5. There's a nice intersection square for rook on d4. That's a general feel for a top line play with the e5 move. At the end of this line here, it's looking at it, evaluation around plus 0.5. Now, this other move I want to draw your attention to at this point here after queen g3 is knight to h5. Now, I think many players would quickly discard this move here because, if you go to h4, what would be your follow-up exactly? First of all, if the queen goes here, we could maybe just end up repeating moves, not making progress. But there is a nice little trick available to black if the queen goes to h4. This doesn't mean it's some fantastic continuation for black, but it keeps black in the game. Interesting sequence of moves here. You may think at this point, playing as black, that your only option is to return the knight when you're not making progress. You're running into e5. There's going to be an accident happening shortly on h7. What would be your options here as black? The answer to queen h4 would not be to exchange bishops, because now there's a problem with your knight. What do you do with a knight? Doesn't have its favorite square. You'd have to defend the knight, and then you're asking for this, and a fianchetto knight. And next up, you're going to get crushed here on the h-file. What would be the trick available to black in this situation? You ready for this slick move? This is really special. Knight takes f4. I found this one really pretty. What do you do here? If you capture the bishop, the knight can circle back here to g6 and land a fork. Best play from here is an exchange on d6. The queen gets out of the line of fire. All right, in the end, black has a nice square on e5 to work with. White is still a tick better. Interesting sequence. The other interesting sequence at this point here, well, what's happening exactly if queen takes knight. Can't take with the bishop. You lose the queen. If you take with the queen, check this move out. f6, bishop h4, the only move. And now g5, you're going to win that piece back. We're not done yet, though, because white could still place this pawn in a pin. But regardless of which of these two squares you go to, let's say g3, in both cases, e5 is a strong reply. If you're on g4 here, e5 is hitting with tempo. This bishop remains stuck. Doesn't have a move here. There is a pin, but how do you get out of this situation? You can't. Black will eventually get this piece back. Now, at the end of all of this, it's still looking at it as an evaluation +1, but anyhow, at the end of the day, not winning, not losing. Interesting sequence there. I found knight h5 into f4, of course, with the help of Stockfish. All right, the move in this game, uncharacteristic blunder here by Fischer. He ends up playing the move h5. Now, what was he thinking with the h5 move? Well, let me explain. There's a little story here. During the game, Fischer touched his h-pawn with the intention to move to h6, but then realized before making the move, it could just be captured. There's a pin on the g-file. So he basically called the touch move rule on himself and said, well, if I go to h6, I'm going to lose a pawn. I guess it's better to play h5. h5 was played. This is now completely gone. So that was not necessarily the h5 move, but the idea of touching the pawn with the intention to play to h6 was really his blunder. He determined h5 would be the better of the two legal moves. h5 in this game. How white follows up? Pretty much perfect play here by white. e5 now. Chop, chop. Where to go with the knight? g4 it is. Bishop exchange. From here, knight e4. And queen c7 is played now. If you try something like f5, white could take. And after the knight recaptures, queen g6 is one way. Looking at knight takes knight. Queen h7 ideas, or maybe even collecting the h-pawn in some cases. This is completely broken down. In this game, no f5. It is some more pressure here on e5, but h3 is a perfect response. Knight takes e5 is played here. If queen takes e5, we could simply take the knight. We wouldn't have to resolve the tension with the queens. Our queen is defended. So it is knight takes e5, and white comes in here now with knight f6 check. I also want to point out that if the knight went somewhere else here in response to h3, if it goes back to h6, the queen can sneak up to g5, looking at that h5 pawn. Also, maybe even looking to collect that pawn with the knight. All right, in this one, h3 met with knight takes e5, knight f6 check, only one move, king h8, queen now pivots on g5. What are you supposed to do here? There is a mate in one threat. Knight takes bishop check is played here. If you take the knight, it's going to be mate in two. Check, checkmate. Got that square. So knight takes bishop is played. You remove one attacker, but also, well, invite another attacker into the mix. Rook recapture. Pawn takes knight. And queen takes h. King g7. And after queen g4, Fischer resigned. The only three moves here are with the king. If you go to h7, this is one way to do it. Black's going to have to sacrifice the queen for the rook. But even more precise would be to first land this check. And in that way, after you land this check, if queen takes rook, you get to recapture and throw a punch right back. Get to recapture with check. Also, if the king tries to make a run for it, you will just be getting checkmated. There's one little quiet move in this situation. king completely caught here in a crossfire, it will be checkmate next with queen to f4 in all cases except one. In the case of f5, queen d4 is mate. All right, in this one though, after queen to g4, black resigns. So a very rare elementary blunder here by Fischer, missing that pin on the g file, touching that h pawn, determining h5 would have been better than h6. How white followed up from there was pretty much flawless. Anyhow, what are your thoughts with this one? Feel free as usual to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.